This is something that really enlightened Chris and I when we were going through a journey of trying to figure out, like, what do we say to people? So what we're going to do is rip through the first level of awareness today, which is called unaware. And so the 5 levels of awareness, there's 5 of them. Today we're doing level 1, which is unaware. And it's just basically knowing what to say and how to say it. And so here's the outcome and agenda for today, right? We always want to know what to say and how to say it, always, like, period. That's always. In fact, I just had a conversation with our setter force, and we went over this this little graph and talking about, like, what you should say when someone says this or that or that. So this is great for objection handling. This is great for a lot of different things. And so today we're just going to do an overview of the 5 levels to give you kind of the bigger picture, broad zoomed out. And then we're going to zoom in to level 1 and go through the unaware side of the house and talk about some copy that you guys can use. And then we'll dive into Q&A as always. So my first question is this. You guys are out there in the world, you're using FlowChat, or maybe you're not, or you, hopefully you are, right? For those people that are watching this on recording. And have you ever gotten to this place where you send a message and you're so excited, and then all of a sudden this happens and you're like, you don't hear anything back, and you're like, oh man, like, he didn't say anything back, or she didn't say anything back to me, right? Has that ever happened to you, right? Or how about this one? When you send a cold response to somebody and they come back and they're like, what you say to me, boy, right? Like, that feeling sucks because it's icky. It doesn't feel good. It's not the coolest thing, right? And so the idea is, here's a third one, right? Has this one ever happened where you send a message out to somebody and they're like, I love it. You're so wonderful. You're great. And that's what they're saying to your face. And behind your back, they're doing this. See you later. Not cool. And then they never respond to you anymore. Well, that, my friends, is what you call being ghosted, right? Nobody likes to be ghosted, specifically when you're talking about messaging, because it just gets really frustrating. So what do we do? How do we go? And again, let's say we do the first couple of messages, and then if you go try to talk to that person again, you get this angry face all over again, the same one. Never a good thing, right? So what do we do? How come some people make it look so easy? How come some people just seem like they can walk on water and know that? It's because they actually know some of the framework. So there's 5 levels of awareness, and they go like this. There's unaware folks. These are the folks that are oblivious. They don't know what they don't know. They're in a place where they're just like dumbfounded, and they have this wonderful idea. I want to build a business. I don't know what problems I'm going to fall into. I don't know what pitfalls are ahead of me. I don't know how hard the work is going to be. They're just unaware about everything. So there are those types of folks. The second type of folks are folks that are problem aware. Problem aware folks that have been in the game for a little bit of time, and they realize that they don't know what they don't know, and they figure out that they have this problem. Example, I don't know how to acquire business as fast as I'd like to acquire for my business. I have a problem. I don't even know what to do or how to go about it, right? So those are level 2. Level 3 are those people that are solution aware. These are people that have gone down a little path even further, and they're like, okay, I have the problem. I know there's a couple of solutions. In fact, maybe I've tested 1 or 2 of these solutions, but it's still not solving my problem. So those people are what we call solution aware, right? Their awareness level of the product or service that you have, or the awareness level of the problem or thing that they're facing. Next, we get into product aware. These are those people that have tried several different solutions, and then they're like, oh, there's this whole niche of tech, and I like this tech better than that tech, or I like this product better than that product. These people are even more aware, and they know how to execute at an even higher level. And then, of course, you have the people who are most aware. These are the people that are not only aware of you and your product and your service, but they're also aware of your brand. In fact, like ClickFunnels is a really wonderful example of this. I'm such an high aware person about ClickFunnels community because Chris and I were in the inner circle with Russell for years and years and years. I bleed the ClickFunnels colors because I love the product and service and the culture that they've built over there. And I know exactly, like, and it's, again, you see the logo of Nike and it says, just do it. We all know Nike is shoes. That's what they started as. Of course, they're in apparel and all the other places now, but we're very highly aware of what they are. Now, when you have this awareness level and you recognize where your prospects sit on the scale, this is where we know what kind of messaging we want to tune up to send to those people. right? And so here's another way of looking at it. It's just unaware, problem aware, solution aware, product aware, and most aware. So your prospects, your clients are going to fall somewhere on the spectrum based on what you do, what products you have, what services you have to offer. So what do we say? What do we say, right? So here's the type of copy that we should write. Again, this comes directly out of this book. If somebody is very unaware, if we're looking at the right side of the spectrum over here, we want to start with things that are very what like an unaware person would stick onto. We talk about things like stories and we tell secrets. Why do we do that? We tell stories because they're very easy to remember. And more importantly, when you tell somebody a good story, the point from the story sticks in their brain and it allows them to go forward and execute and feel good about the thing. As somebody gets more and more aware, as we move from right to left on this graph, you can see they become problem aware, solution aware, product aware, and then most aware. If you're looking at the most aware side of the coin, the product and the price, right? This is where you're going to see, hey, come in for this discount, get these cigars or whatever it may be. And that's where we start to go about like discounts and things of that sort. So today, what we're going to talk about is the unaware into the problem aware side, where what do we talk about? Story leads and proclamation leads. Now, the term lead means the lead messaging that we're sending out to the prospect. So don't get confused with that, like a lead coming your direction. This is a lead that the writing lead or the copywriting that we're going to be sending out to these people. So here's another great example of, now this is I've switched a little bit, but you can see here on the left, the unaware people, they need to develop the problem vocabulary. That's what they're trying to develop. And the way they do that is they can use stories to remember the problem and how to describe it. They can use checklists. And again, I've talked about this quite often. If you're the person who can describe your problem the best, better than your prospect can describe it in their mind, and you can wrap that into a story, that person will always remember you because they said, whoa, well, Sean Chris described the problem better than I could even describe it in my own mind. I immediately have a bias that says if they can describe the problem, it means they probably have faced it and they probably know the solution. So there's a high probability that that prospect will end up going in your direction. So let's talk about the copy, right? Deep dive into the unaware side. So if this is those people, if you're out there right now and you're listening to this and you're like, okay, I'm going to start this cool new thing and nobody knows what I'm doing and nobody's even aware that I'm going to do it, but I'm solving this one problem and I want to talk to the people. This is going to be the very coldest market that you ever go into, the unaware group of people where you have to start. So in our world is a great example. We sell software that helps in the DMs, right? And so if I were to go into some sort of a convention that was like a business to business convention that doesn't even use online marketing whatsoever, and I had to come in there and I had to describe or explain what it is that I'm doing, these are the unaware folks of my market that could use my tech, but it's going to take kind of a Herculean effort to get them integrated, inducted, and share some of the things with them, right? So here's what not to say, right? First thing we do is we never want to talk about price. So if we're talking to an unaware market, we never ever want to share any numbers, right? What we want to do is we want to get them emotionally involved in the problem that they're facing and ask them what they've seen or tried to do about it before we even ever get to any price. Secondly, we never even want to talk about the name of our product or service. And this is because we need to relate. We need to build rapport with them so that they're like, oh, Sean, Chris, they're great guys. Like they seem to know their stuff. They do something in the online world. I know that, but I don't know what their product is or service that they do, but they tell great stories and they seem to be able to get big transformations for their clients. That's interesting, right? Third one, you never really want to talk about what your product does. We just want to, again, relate to them and where they're at in their journey. And so let's get into what we actually want to say. We want to use these things called proclamation leads. I'll give you examples in a couple of seconds, but very simply put, a proclamation lead is making a big, bold claim about one sort of a thing to get a transformation. Transformation is the key word when you're talking about a proclamation lead. And I'll share an example. The second one is using stories. We all know stories sell very, very well. So let's talk about proclamations leads. Here's the 4 rules when it comes to making these big, bold claims when you're talking to an unaware market. Number one, it needs to be bold and not reasonable. Make it not reasonable because then people think you're almost crazy. There's a spectrum called the prolific scale. Okay, so the prolific scale, if you look at a line going back and forth, left to right, in the middle of that line, you've got the normal zone. You're normal, I'm normal, everybody's normal. That's boring. Normal is boring, right? Not normal is interesting. So on either side of normal on this line, we have the prolific side. You've got right, left, right wing, left wing, right? So you can be prolific without being crazy on either side of that line. So when we make a proclamation up of what we're saying to people, we want it to live in that prolific zone, but not in the crazy zone, okay? Secondly, make a promise. A promise is always a great thing. And again, this kind of ties into the transformation of what you're saying. And the subject, of course, must be relevant. And then we return to the proclamation at the close. So here's an example of a proclamation lead. Read this or die, right? Now, that's a humongous proclamation. We're like, oh my God, read this or die. Like, I don't want to die. And then if you look in the smaller print, it says today you have a 95% chance of eventually dying from a disease or condition of which there is already a known cure somewhere on the planet. The editor of alternatives would like you to free you from that destiny. Pretty interesting to say, okay, well, very big proclamation. They're claiming that I'm going to die if I don't read their article. Okay, that's prolific, but it's not too crazy. What are they talking about? And it forces you to want to go and read more. That's the point of a proclamation lead, is to be big and bold and catch your attention, kind of like a pattern interrupt, right? So the format for this is we want to make it bold and not reasonable. We want to make a promise. The subject must be relevant. And then we just return to the proclamation at the close. So that's an example of proclamation. And again, we can get into your world of how we do that here after the show of the slides here. But let's talk about a story lead just for a second so you can have a broad view of that. As Plato says, those who tell stories rule the world. Why? Because stories are very easy to remember. And if you get to these simple stories that are very easy to tell, you should be able to tell any story in either 1 or 2 minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, or even an hour long. I remember watching Russell Brunson when he did $3 million in 90 minutes on a stage in front of Grant Cardone's stage. I was watching the whole thing, and he came to me after the thing, and we were having a chat about it. And obviously, he's incredible, one of the best of the best. And I said, man, like, you told some of the stories that I've heard, but you went way more into depth. And he said, yeah, that's the cool thing. When I build stories, Sean, I can tell that story in 2 minutes. If I only have 2 minutes to talk about it, I can tell it in 10 minutes. I can tell it in 30 minutes, or I can even use it for an hour, as you saw right there then in the stage. And it all comes down to the details. But again, people remember the stories. They remember the points. It's very powerful. So the 4 key elements of telling a story to somebody is always just have one strong idea. Most people, when they're telling stories, go a little bit too deep. They try to have more than one strong idea and they fall down. Secondly, the desirable result, right? We have this idea. This is the epiphany part. Then we have this transformation, which is the desirable benefit. And then we have one driving emotion, whether it be fear, anger, happiness, sadness, whatever that thing may be. And then we have one inevitable solution of, hey, all roads lead to this solution. This is the one thing that's going to help, right? And again, in our world, it would be, you could do paid ads, you could do challenges, you could do summits, you could do all these other things. But guess what? The thing that ties it all together is your direct communication. Where does that happen? In the DMs. This is why FlowChat is the glue to anything that you're doing in your world, right? Again, that's type of an example of how you could have one inevitable solution, just using FlowChat as an example. So here's an example of a story lead, right? And it doesn't talk about product or service or price or anything else. It says this: they laughed when I sat down at the piano, but when I started to play, people are going to say, well, did he bomb or did he crush, right? And what this particular newspaper is selling is piano lessons, if you can believe it or not, right? So the format here, they laughed when blank, but when I blank. And you can change the words from they laughed when blank. But this format, take a picture of this because this is so simple, but it's so powerful. And we could create examples for each and every single one of you in your business. This is really perfect for when you're making posts on social. This is really perfect for when you're trying to catch somebody's attention in the unaware market, when you're sending an initial DM out to them, right? We want to have this pattern interrupting formula. You can see there's no first name anywhere in this message if we were to use it as a message, and it's very, very sticky, okay? So here's a couple of pro tips, and then we'll get into the Q&A. The unaware market's where you find new places to sell products and services. So you typically don't want to go into the unaware market until you've already gone through your product aware and your problem and your solution aware folks. So your hottest market, those people that know you, some call it friends and family, some call it other people, referrals, et cetera, et cetera. These people have already had some sort of preconceived notion about what it is you do and the problems that you solve, and maybe the solutions you bring, or even the brand that you have to offer. And these are the people that are going to convert quicker. But the nice part is, if and when you get through some of that stuff and you go into this unaware market, these are the coldest prospects that you'll find, and they're the quickest to give you feedback, critical feedback that you can use to revamp your offer to make it simple for other people to understand. This is where smart marketers make their fortune, because they figure out exactly what to say to the cold market, and then they can take that messaging, go back to their warm market, and they can say the same thing, and it hits even harder. And this is where the pros compete, because most of the pros that have been around for a while have already gone through a lot of their warm and hot markets, and now they need to move into that kind of colder section. That's why you start to see some of these other cool ads that are coming out. So today's mission of the week is very simple. There's 3 things to do. Number 1, identify your unaware market. Where do they hang out, right? And this is very valuable for anybody to do. We're talking about the unaware people. It's not the people that you've been looking for. It's like, where are other potential big markets that I could go play in at some point in time? That's what we want to figure out and find out. Just take a piece of paper out and write down where they might hang out. Secondly, what are you saying to them now? If you're already addressing them, what is the messaging that you're sharing with them? Is it a proclamation? Is it a story? Or is it something else? Because if it's something else, we want to check ourselves before we wreck ourselves, right? Secondly, review how you address your unaware market, like I just mentioned. And then lastly, here it is. If this is fitting for your business, not fitting for everybody, because some people don't sell to that. Like example, I know Cody is here on the session with us right now. Cody sells to roofers. Roofers usually have a pretty high awareness level of people that can bring leads into a roofing business. Maybe you don't have to be like the unaware style, but at the same time, maybe there's other people that are thinking about going into roofing that are unaware of things. This is where that becomes interesting, right? And so what we want to do is write, and again, a great drill just to practice. To get better at this stuff, practice makes permanent, as they say, not perfect, because nobody's perfect, but it makes permanent. Write down a proclamation or a story lead that you could use for a post on social. Secondly, write down a proclamation or a story lead, how you could use it in Messenger. And when you start to build the muscles up of how to talk to your unaware market, it's only going to bring nothing but speed and result to your business. And with that said, if you do the work, you'll definitely get the results. Chris and I have been through this exercise a number of times, and I could tell you that it's extremely powerful if you focus on understanding the awareness level of where your prospect starts, where they're at the process right now. And then if you tie the right messaging right in there, you'll hit every single time. And then you'll be that person where you look like you walk on water. It's because you have the formula, you know the science, and then you just layer your art right on top.